What has two engines, flies in the dead of night, and makes enemies hiding in the jungle go poof? Something very, very spooky. Close air support in Vietnam, and the many lessons learned from trying to effectively employ it, would birth many weird and wonderful aircraft and programs to better modernize the USAF's ability to operate both at night and against foes keen on staying hidden from above. One such development of these efforts is Project Gunship, the birth of America's ostentatious Flying Oblivion Deliveries Service. Beginning in 1964, the first gunship was a Convair C-131 with a GAU-2 minigun on the left side, and would prove the theory of using a pylon turn and side-mounted armament to deliver accurate supporting fire to a point on the ground. Captain Ron W. Terry, after returning from South Vietnam, would see this experimental support plane and saw great promise in it, and soon set about converting two C-47 Dakotas into the first operational examples under the newly christened Operation Gunship. The AC-47 Spooky, also known as Puff the Magic Dragon in its early service, was equipped with three M134 miniguns mounted on the left side and a small nation's worth of ammunition for all three guns. The first trial of the gunship would be in December of 1964, where an AC-47 responded to an urgent request for air support during a VC night attack in the Mekong Delta. 4,500 rounds from on high later, and the VC attack was thwarted. The following 16 sorties were all similarly successful, with one notable example in February of 1965, where a lone gunship suppressed an entire VC offensive for 4 hours, expending over 20,000 rounds of ammunition in the process. In July of 1965, with these repeat successes proving the effectiveness of gunships, the first AC-47 squadron was established, the 4th Air Commando Squadron, which still operates to this day using AC-130Js. The general use doctrine of the Spooky was quite simple: respond to calls for air support by ground forces, and simply pepper enemy positions with ungodly amounts of lead, keeping them suppressed and incapable of fighting effectively until either the enemy retreated, or were all turned into red puffs. They accomplished this feat safe from return fire, as commonly this task was done at night, utilizing aerial flares to spot targets. While daylight missions were also executed, these were done in places the US had absolute air superiority in, and often against the Viet Cong's many guerrilla actions rather than the NVA itself. In terms of losses, 19 were recorded, with 12 being in action, a substantial number from the only 53 AC-47s ever converted to Spooky standard. Despite this high attritional loss rate, however, the effect and success of Spooky missions were evident by no village under Spooky protection ever being lost, and the mountain of claims and letters from both civilians and soldiers of how Spooky gunships saved their lives. This success would be the US's inspiration to begin Project Gunships 2 and 3, which would culminate in the venerable AC-130, as well as the lesser-known but equally interesting AC-119. Both of which would replace the AC-47 in gunship duties in the USAF's inventory. The AC-47s, meanwhile, would mostly be handed off to the South Vietnamese Air Force, as well as those of Laos and Cambodia. By 1975, South Vietnam's AC-47 fleet was mostly destroyed following the end of the war with the fall of Saigon. Though only 53 were ever officially converted, so successful was the very concept of the gunship, as well as the legacy of this AC-47 Spooky itself, that today there are still a few rare examples of Spooky or Spooky-inspired aircraft flying. The most recent example is dated to 2017, where Basler BT-67s, DC-3s modified for extended life in service by Basler Corp of Oshkosh, Wisconsin, were equipped for gunship service in the counterinsurgency role by Columbia, a role they reportedly still perform in to this day. As for original AC-47 Spookies, there are none that survived from Vietnam, but at least one known flying replica converted from a civilian DC-3 is known to exist in the USA, as well as two display aircraft similarly converted from DC-3s found at the Air Commando Park at Holbert Field and in the Air Force Armament Museum at Eglin Air Force Base.